Half Price Books is holding Local Author Palooza, where you can meet local writers, one of which is Wykeeta Lee, author of Breaking the Silence from Shame, My Journey. Wykeeta, how are you today?
I'm well, Raynah.
Good, good. So, what is the shame that you're talking about in this book?
The shame that I'm talking about, it's my journey from spiritual abuse. And I talk about the shame being how I felt about myself as a Christian.
Now, see, what's interesting is you hear about physical abuse, you hear about mental abuse, you hear about emotional abuse, but this is a new one, spiritual abuse. So define that for me.
Yes. According to David Johnson, who is the author of Subtle Powers of Spiritual Abuse, they define it as a person who's been mistreated, who was in need of support for spiritual empowerment, resulting into undermining, weakening of their spiritual empowerment.
And what made you realize, is some defining moment in your life that made you realize, you know what, I'm being spiritually abused? When did you have that awakening?
I was in denial for quite some time. I ended up going to a support group, and it was for just various types of abuse, but my aha moment came actually from them, because after I shared my story, they was like, you were abused. And I was like, what, abuse? Because it's one of those taboo things. We don't want to associate abuse with the church. We hear a lot about church hurt, but to say that it's abuse, that seems too harsh. And so one of the signs that a person has been spiritually abused is that they have an inability to articulate that it is spiritual abuse. That was me.
What does that look like?
It looks like a person who's been spiritually abused, they have a distorted view of God. So, for instance, they think if they do something right, God is mad at them. If they do something, wrong, God is mad at them. A person has an identity crisis as a Christian. They don't feel like they're good enough or worthy enough to be used by God. Another thing is a person, they can't say no. So the perpetrator takes their right to say no away from them. They lack boundaries. And so the person feels that if they say no, there is some kind of way not being loyal, to the assembly.
So in other forms of abuse, they say sometimes it sneaks up on you and you don't even realize that it's happening to you until you're in the midst of it. And by then your sense of reality is so warped that you don't even know you're being abused. Mm-hmm. Is it similar, or how is spiritual abuse
It's
similar?
very much similar to other forms of abuse. That's why, as I stated before, the authors of subtle. It's very subtle. It sneaks in. And the deception part is what makes deception. Deception is there's an element of truth. And so before you know it, you find yourself in a situation and it is abuse, which is the abnormal thing of an use of a thing. And so it really does sneak up on you. For me, I was very vulnerable, and as most victims are, and that person knew it, and they preyed on that. Not prayed, but preyed on that.
P-R-E-Y.
Right, it's A-Y. Correct.
Okay.
And so, and that's how most people are perpetrators. They seek out those who are weak, those who are vulnerable, and they give you something or say something that you've been needing and longing, and then the next thing you find yourself in a situation that you never thought you would be in.
Well, you've written a book about it, and we're going to get to that. We have to take a break, but when we come back, let's talk about, what prompted you to write the book and what your hopes are for those who get a chance to read your book. We'll learn more with Wykeeta Lee after this. Stay with us.